75 years of independence. Wow. This 15th August is celebrated year after year as we gain freedom from the British Raj on this very day. But it was a birthday gift to the thin brown-skinned young man of India. The storm in the eyes of Britishers who came in the public view in 1906 like a blazing star in the sky of Indian inspiration. He set the country on fire, demanding independence for India, while Indian National Congress was still trying to find ways. The cry for India's independence has begun much before Gandhiji took the leadership movement and Subhash Chandra Bose was still a young boy at school. 26 May 1910, Viceroy Lord Minto wrote to Viscount John Marley stating that I shall repeat only what I said to you in the letter of April 14th, that he is the most dangerous man we now have to reckon with. Yes, Aurobindo Ghosh was the most dangerous man who had predicted India's independence way earlier. And when it happened on 15th August, a special birthday gift to the freedom fighter who is a name to reckon with and beyond redemption. Aurobindo Ghosh, the most dangerous man in the pre-independence era. Aurobindo Ghosh was charged and arrested in the Alipore bomb case. The British was so scared that he will influence others in jail that he was put under solitary confinement. Although shaken at the beginning, he stepped out of the jail a changed man. He started practicing yoga of the Bhagavad Gita and realized the immanent Godhead Vasudeva. He had the darshan of Vasudeva in everyone and everywhere. Stepping out of jail, he started writing the journal Karma Yogin. He used the pen instead of gun to fight the British.
When I went to jail, the whole country was alive with the cry of Bande Mataram. When I came out of jail, I listened for that cry, but there was instead a silence. No man seemed to know which way to move. What shall we do next? But one thing I knew, that it was the almighty power of God which had raised that cry, that hope. So it was the same power which had sent down that silence. He who was in the shouting and the movement was also in the pause and the hush. I had been made familiar with silence in my prison, and because I knew it was in the pause and the hush that I had myself learned this lesson through the long year of my detention. Day after day, I realized in the mind, I realized in the heart, I realized in the body truths of the Hindu religion. They became living experiences to me, and things were opened to me which no material science could explain. When I approached God at that time, I hardly had a living faith in Him. The agnostic was in me, the skeptic was in me, the atheist was in me, and I was not absolutely sure that there was a God at all. I did not feel His presence, yet something drew me to the truth of the Vedas, the truth of the Gita, the truth of the Hindu religion as preached by Swami Vivekananda. I felt there must be a mighty truth somewhere in this yoga, a mighty truth in this religion based on the Vedanta. I prayed to Him, if Thou art, then Thou knowest my heart. Thou knowest that I do not ask for mukti. I do not ask for anything which others ask for. I ask only for strength to uplift this nation. I ask only to be allowed to live and work for these people whom I love and to whom I may pray that I may devote my life. Give me Thy Adesh. I do not know what work to do or how to do it. Give me a message. In the communion of yoga, two messages came. The first message said, I have given you a work and it is to help to uplift this nation. I give you the Adesh to go forth and do my work. The second message came and it said, something had been shown to you in this year of seclusion, something about which you had your doubts, and it is the truth of the Hindu religion, which I have perfected and developed through the rishis, saints, and avatars, and now It is going forth to do my work among the nations. This is Sanatana Dharma. That which we call the Hindu religion is really an eternal religion because it is the universal religion which embraces all the others. A religion cannot be universal if it is not eternal. A narrow religion, a sectarian religion, an exclusive religion can only live for a limited time and a limited purpose.
Aurobindo Ghosh was guided by Swami Vivekananda, who initiated a change. In the jail, he was totally transformed into a godly man from a revolutionary. The truth of the Vedas, the truth of the Bhagavad Gita, the realization of the yoga, and finally the darshan of the divine brought forth a completely new Sri Aurobindo.
Namaskar, Dada. Dada, your effort to combat the gloom and despondency in the air by launching the 2 weekly journals, the Karma Yogin in English and the Dharma in Bengali, are very helpful to us to understand the path shown by the divine.
Namaskar. Dada, your cover page illustrations of Lord Krishna and Arjuna seated in their chariots on the battlefield of Kurukshetra and the two mottos on top, remember me and fight, and yoga is skill in work, are really very inspiring, Dada.
Yes, Dada. Very inspiring.
Namaskar, Dada. The government is trying to deport you. In fact, they might arrest you again. Just saying because I was concerned.
Do not worry, Nivedita. I shall take steps to forestall their action.
The British government, in an effort to placate the Indian feelings, had come forward with an half-hearted proposals for the reforms of India, but they did not transfer any political power to India. Aurobindo Ghosh did not accept this. That's why the Britishers wanted to arrest him, but they couldn't so. Frustrated in the two directions, the government continued to keep a close watch on the writings in Karma Yogin, so as to not miss any opportunity of convicting Aurobindo Ghosh on a charge of sedition.
Arona, I got an information from police high official that there is a warrant of arrest issued against you.
Dada! Dada! The police. Please leave, Dada. Please leave.
Please leave, Dada. Please leave, Dada. Please, Dada. Please, Dada.
Go to Chandanagar.
I will go to Chandanagar.
Sri Aurobindo stayed at Chandonagar for about 6 weeks. First at Motilal's house, then at number of other locations to avoid attracting attention from the police informers. Chandonagar was too dangerously near Kolkata for Sri Aurobindo to stay. Various plans for him to go elsewhere were suggested when he again heard the voice, "Go to Pondicherry." This is how the divine protects and guides us when we take refuge to him alone. Mamekam Sharanam Vraja, as the Gita says.
Plans for Aurobindo Ghosh's departure to Pondicherry had to be made in great secrecy because of police surveillance. There were 2 stages of the journey. The first and shorter passage was from Chandornagar to Calcutta. Sri Aurobindo relied on Motilal to make the arrangements. He also sent out a word to Amar Chatterjee, a great revolutionary from Uttarapur, for his assistance. The second part of the journey was longer and fraught with much greater risk. For this, Sri Aurobindo wrote out to his maternal cousin Sukumar Mitra to work out some details in the plan. Sukumar was also also advised that Bijoy Nag, a young follower of Sri Aurobindo, would accompany him to Pondicherry. At the same time, Sri Aurobindo wrote out to Suresh Chakravarti asking him to travel to Pondicherry and make arrangements for their stay.
So, what's the plan?
Aroda instructed me to go to Pondicherry in advance to prepare for his stay.
Bijoy, you to proceed with Suresh.
Yes, I will proceed with Suresh. Saurin has made arrangements. I have to get to Howrah station and get on Madras mail. We have to depart on 28th March.
Vande Mataram.
Bande Mataram.
Suresh visits the barber early morning of 28th March to get a haircut. He bought some new clothes and informed everybody around that he was going to his hometown, Pabna, by the Darjeeling mail to attend a marriage. This was to mislead them. He puts his new clothes and carries the piece of paper on which Sri Aurobindo writes a few lines of intro to his friends at Pondicherry. Suresh reaches Howrah station. All around was the noisy hustle bustle of the passengers. He spots Saurin after much searching. He then takes from him a trunk and small bedding room. This is how Suresh leaves Calcutta and reaches Pondicherry on March 31st. Sukumar instructs two persons. The police in plain clothes were watching him. He informs the youth to send Sri Aurobindo to Pondi by a French ship and not by rail. The two youth were Nagendra Kumar Gure and Surendra Kumar Chakravarti. They were instructed to purchase tickets to Colombo and place the trunks full of books in the Colombo steamer going to Sri Lanka. This was to divert the police attention towards Colombo in place of Pondi. The SS duplex ship was docked at Chandpal Ghat. Two tickets were booked for Sri Aurobindo and Bijoy under different names of Bankim Chandra Bhaumik and Jatinder Nag Mittal. The ship was to sail on April 1st from Chandor Nagar to Pondi. To mislead the police, Amar Chatterjee hired a boat at Uttarapur and was to pick up Sri Aurobindo halfway to Calcutta from Agrapura. Sri Aurobindo was then transferred to another boat to be finally able to board the duplex at Chandpal Ghat.
Pranam Arodada, it has been a great honor to keep you as my guest in my humble abode.
Thank you, my friend Motilal. Namaskar.
They reached the Chandpal Ghat. Meanwhile, two other persons pretending to be Aurobindo Ghose and his friend boarded the Colombo ship. The plan which was decided had gone awry. Aurobindo Ghose and Bijoy, before boarding the Colombo ship, had to be examined by the doctor and had to carry their medical certificates. The situation was full of danger, as Aurobindo Ghose's face was well known to the police. Hence, he had to travel hiding. All others were tensed and restless. But Aurobindo Ghose was untroubled, unshaken, and motionless like a statue. Because he was silent, a Puri thought him to be scared. He goes near him and asks, Babu, why are you so scared? The Sahib is a very good man. Don't be afraid of him. He shakes his arms. Aurobindo also smiles. Finally, they come out with certificates and climb into the carriage.
Sri Aurobindo safely reached Pondicherry on April 4, 1910. He followed the divine Adesh. His sudden departure to Pondi and complete severance from politics caused a vacuum. The British did not believe that he has withdrawn from politics, and others thought that he was retiring from politics for his own salvation and called him a truant and an escapist. In Sri Aurobindo's words, I did not leave politics because I felt I could do nothing more there. Such an idea is far away from me. I came away because I didn't want anything to interfere with my yoga, and because I got a divine Adesh. There was no motive of despair or sense of futility in my withdrawal. For the following years, police in disguise observed the moments as they were mortally scared of Sri Aurobindo's influence on the youth. His very principle of yoga was not only to realize the divine but also to take worldly activities as a scope of spiritual consciousness. For Sri Aurobindo, all life is yoga.
Thus shall the earth open to divinity,
and common nature feel the wide uplift.
Illumine common acts with the Spirit's ray.
and meet the deity in common things. Nature shall live to manifest secret God.
The spirit should take up the human play.
This earthly life become the life divine.
This earthly life